Hello friends, so I'm back on the YouTube game. It's been a minute, but I am dedicating myself to this series. So I'm gonna do it, and I hope you enjoy it. And as you can tell by the title, it is vegan bodybuilding. I want to start off by saying my idea of bodybuilding might be a little bit different than your idea of bodybuilding, but basically what I mean by vegan bodybuilding is sculpting your body into the shape that you want it, developing your muscles and being able to see them. By bodybuilding, I do not mean competition, getting competition lean, getting the ideal physique, all that fun stuff. So, because I think that varies person to person. Start off by saying, I'm Nika for those who don't know me. I am not a registered dietitian, so keep that in the forefront of your mind. However, I am a certified personal trainer. I've been a personal trainer for a little bit over 2 years now. I'm a fitness nutrition specialist. I have my BS in psychology with a minor in biology. I was a nutrition major for a little bit, but obviously did not go that route. Yeah, so I've been vegan for 4 years almost, and I've been lifting for 4 years. So all of the progress that I've made in my physique has been as a vegan. I also do want to preface this by saying I am 6 feet tall and about 170 pounds. So I can eat a lot more than most people. Also, I don't really know. In terms of my audience, you guys might know a ton about macros, you might know nothing about macros, you might know a ton about veganism, you might know nothing about veganism. So I'm going to try to start off basic and then build on top of that. So if something is redundant, I apologize. So today's episode is about protein. Protein is grossly overestimated about how much protein that you need. Most macro calculators online are grossly overestimating protein as well, and I think that's where vegans run into a lot of trouble, especially when they're trying to put on muscle. So I made a little cheat sheet, so if I look down a lot, that's why, because I want to make sure I cover all of my bases. So bodybuilders usually grossly overestimate the amount of protein. I've seen people eating up to 3 grams of protein per pound of body weight, and that's ridiculous. Your body does not need that much protein regardless of whether you are Phil Heath or you are a 100-pound girl. You do not need that much protein in your diet. You could be getting an adequate amount of protein to build muscle, and you could be eating carbs and fats instead of that. So bodybuilders grossly overestimate protein. The RDA, so that is the recommended daily allowance set by the government, by registered dietitians and people with PhDs in nutritional science and people that know a ton more than I do and a lot more than you do. They set the nutritional requirements. So for athletes, the RDA recommends that you have 1.2 to 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So a lot of bodybuilders have taken the kilogram and replaced it with pound, and that's why people are eating ridiculous amounts of protein. So it's 1.2 to 1.8 grams per kilogram. So if you are in the States, you are not familiar with kilos, you're gonna need to convert it from your body weight. So I weigh 170 pounds, and so when you divide that by so to get your kilos, you want to divide your body weight in pounds by 2.2. So for me, that turns out to be 78 kilos, give or take. So for muscle building, I personally would need to eat 93 to 140 grams of protein a day. So that being said, that's a lot less than most online calculators would give me. Any online calculator that I've ever put in my information for gives me 170 to 200 grams of protein a day. That's ridiculous. I absolutely am not going to eat that much protein, and it's really challenging to eat that much protein whether you're a vegan or you're eating meat for every meal. Eating 170 grams of protein is a fuck ton of protein. So keep that in mind. Definitely calculate how much protein that you need. I would say as a vegan, I try to aim towards the higher number just because plant protein is digested a little bit differently in our bodies. So just to be on the safe side, I personally aim to get about 120 to 140 grams of protein per day, and it is possible. So if you weigh a lot less than 170 pounds, or if you weigh more than 170 pounds, be sure to calculate how much protein you need, because you probably don't need as much protein as you think you do, and as much as your fave fitness person on the internet is telling you to. I think another issue within the fitness industry and just like the weight loss world in general is that people aren't eating enough calories in general. I'm talking about protein in the sense of building muscle. So this isn't about like cutting. I'll do an entire video about cutting and bulking and all that stuff. But as a human being, whatever diet you follow, you're going to need to eat in a caloric surplus in order to gain muscle mass. Meaning you need to be eating more calories than you are burning. And that's a really scary concept for a lot of people. And it was a really scary concept for me, which is why for the first 1.5 to 2 years, I was not putting on muscle at the rate I should have been putting muscle on. And that was because I wasn't eating enough. I was aiming to eat 1,500 calories a day, if that. And for me, that is a ridiculously low number. You need to eat more than you've been eating in order to put on muscle mass. I coach people online with nutrition and personal training, and the biggest thing that people come to me with is that they're not eating enough. And so if someone goes from eating 1,200 calories to 1,500 calories, yeah, it's not great that they're eating 1,500 calories, but at least it's a little bit of an increase. So you want to slowly increase your calories in that sense if you're not eating enough. You don't want to go from eating 1,200 calories to eating 3,000 calories a day, because you will gain a lot of fat along the way. And if that's not your goal, then I would not recommend doing that. So you need to be eating enough. So you cannot be afraid to eat. Eating is so important, and if your goal is to build muscle and to get toned, you need to be eating, because a toned physique, all that means is that you're building muscle and you're getting lean, and you will not build muscle if you do not eat in a caloric surplus. So keep that in mind. So let's talk about macros really quick, since we're talking about protein. So macros are your macronutrients. So it's carbs, fats, and proteins. Those are the three main macronutrients. Alcohol is also a macronutrient, but we're not going to talk about that today. So carbs, fats, proteins. A lot of people are tracking macros this day and age because it allows for flexible dieting, and it turns away from the more rigid, clean eating lifestyle typically associated with bodybuilding. So when I first got into bodybuilding, flexible dieting wasn't really a thing. It was you're eating rice, chicken, and broccoli for 3 to 5 meals a day. And if you're not eating chicken, you're eating tilapia. And I think that's where a lot of vegans get tripped up on, because they want to keep that same rigid structure, but obviously you can't eat the meat, so what are you supposed to replace that with? And when I first got into bodybuilding and became vegan, this was a really easy transition for me, because I was a very, very clean eater. I went from eating rice, chicken, and vegetables to eating rice, tofu, and vegetables. And then instead of having eggs as my breakfast meal, I switched it with oats, and then I started adding protein powder to my oats. So it was a really easy way for me to get my protein in. However, I got sick of tofu very, very quickly, and it's why to this day I avoid it like the plague. Eating the exact same foods every day can be great, and that's how I prepped for my first bodybuilding competition, because I just needed that rigid structure. But in my life currently, I do not seek that. And it would be really difficult for me to eat the exact same thing every single day. And I think for most people, especially who just want to like live life and not be a competitive bodybuilder, eating the exact same foods every day isn't super realistic. So tracking macros is a good alternate approach. However, tracking macros can also be really tedious, and it can be something that is really unappealing to most people, because they don't want to have to weigh out every food that they eat, and they don't want to have to be on their phones tracking their macros, all that fun stuff. We're not going to discuss that at this moment. I'm just going to talk about tracking macros really quick. A lot of people have been asking what my macros are and what my like macro split is, my macro ratio for a vegan, and what the best one is for a vegan diet. I don't really have an answer to that. I currently do not track macros. I haven't tracked macros for the last 1.5 years, and I would say I've seen the most changes physically in the last 1.5 years in terms of like building size and staying relatively lean, and I'm really happy with it. However, I did calorie count and macro count for a long time. It wasn't, I mentioned that like flexible dieting wasn't a thing, but I was still making sure I was getting all of my macros, if that makes sense. Anyway, so I did that for a really long time, like 6 to 8 years. And so I'm really, really familiar with the macro breakdowns of most foods. I'm really familiar with how much food I need to be consuming in order to reach my goals. I'm really familiar with portion sizes and all that. So if you've never tracked a macro in your life and you have no idea what like 3 ounces of broccoli looks like, I don't think that tracking is necessary, but I think it is a really good tool to help you understand accurate portion sizes and how much your body truly does need to eat, because you could be thinking you're eating enough and eating 1,000 calories less than you should be eating, or you think you're eating less than you should be eating and you're 1,000 calories above what you should be eating. So I think it's a good idea to track, if only for a week or two, just to see where you're at and how much food your body needs. I think it's a good idea. That being said, like I said, I don't have a macro breakdown. However, when I was tracking macros, I was typically getting 50 to 55% of my calories from carbohydrates, which is pretty high compared to most bodybuilders. I was getting 25 to 30% of my calories from fats, which is also pretty high. And then I was only 20% of my calories were coming from protein. And that is pretty damn good. I know a lot of people have very different macro splits, and honestly, carbs are what is going to fuel your workout. This whole misconception that carbs are the devil and are going to make you fat immediately is bullshit, preposterous, and it's not true. Most people that I've worked with, at least, do exceptionally well with a higher carb diet, and do well when we increase their carbs more so than when we reduce them. Well, if you're eating like absolutely no carbs, like I mentioned earlier, you want to slowly increase them. You don't want to go from eating 80 grams of carbs a day to eating 800 grams of carbs a day, because that's not going, you need to give your body time to transition. I'm just gonna. So now on to like the most important part is vegan protein and what sources to get them from and all that fun stuff. So my diet is not the cleanest diet in the world. I will say that right up front. I do eat a lot of processed foods. It's mostly processed meats that I'm eating, and I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. I eat pizza whenever I want to. I eat mac and cheese whenever I want to. So my diet is not the cleanest, most whole food diet you will find. So if that's what you're like aiming to be, I wouldn't follow the diet that I'm going to talk about. However, I was a whole food eating vegan for a long time, and so I did run into a lot of the troubles that people who are trying to eat super healthy and a whole food diet are running into. So whole food sources of vegan protein, it's going to be a lot of legumes, so beans, lentils, all that fun stuff, as well as nuts and seeds. However, the issue that a lot of people run into at this point is that yes, those foods contain protein, but they contain more carbs. So lentils, for example, usually have a 1-to-2 ratio of protein to carbs. So for 30 grams of carbs, you're going to be getting 15 grams of protein, which typically yields that you're going to be consuming more carbs than you are protein and fat, which is fine. It's totally fine to do that. You just won't be able to eat like 150 grams of protein and 120 grams of carbs if that's your goal. If your goal is to follow a lower carb diet, you're going to definitely have to tap into some of the processed vegan proteins in order to get that split. And I feel like a lot of this is super confusing, so I apologize. The proteins that I personally recommend that you're going to have to do if you're going to aim for a lower carb is seitan, tempeh, and tofu. So those are like the 3 staple protein sources that are really great. So seitan is wheat gluten. If you are a celiac, please avoid this. And then if you have gluten sensitivities, avoid this. I personally had gluten sensitivities in the past. I do not anymore. But seitan does not bother me. And if you have no allergies to gluten, it's not bad. Like, the media makes it out to be that gluten is like made by the devil himself. It's not. Gluten is literally just the protein found in wheat. It's a great source of protein, obviously. So the way they make gluten is they usually take wheat, then they extract the vital wheat gluten, and then they use seasonings, and sometimes they add carbs and fats, and they make it into anything and everything. I have it usually in like a patty form or in like a bacon form, but seitan's really good. It's really high in protein, has almost no carbs or fat. You can also make that yourself. It's a really cheap alternative to meat. So tempeh and tofu, so those are both made from soy, and tofu is just, I don't know how they make it. You can Google it. But tempeh is fermented soy, so it's a little bit on the healthier side because fermented foods are a little bit better for you. So those are great options. I know a lot of vegans try to avoid soy. If you are allergic to soy, obviously avoid it. However, the science is inconclusive about whether soy is bad for you or not. I have not experienced anything negative with eating soy, and I eat a lot of soy products. I typically drink soy milk over almond or cashew milk just because it is higher in protein. However, I do drink almond and soy milk as well. Almond milk is great for calcium. I'll do another series about all the other nutrients, but I drink soy milk, I eat tempeh and tofu, and then I also eat other products that I'll mention later that contain soy, and I have not had any issues. Take that as you may. You can do your own research, make your own decision about it. However, if you do avoid soy, it's going to severely limit the amount of protein that you're going to get as a vegan. And if your goal is to build a ton of muscle, it's going to be a little bit challenging to get that. And then the other products that I want to mention that I am a huge fucking fan of, and mind you, like, I'm not sponsored by any of these companies, even though I highly wish that I was, but I give all my money to them, is Beyond Meat, Gardein, and Tofurky. 3 brands that are like pushing the limits of science, okay? And they're making vegan mock meats, essentially, and a bunch of different products. They literally anything you can think of, there's a vegan version of it. There's crab cakes, meatballs, beef tips, chicken sliders, beef sliders, fishless fillets, like anything and everything you can think of, they make like a vegan source of it. And the first like few months that I was eating this stuff, it was terrifying because it looks exactly like meat. It has the same texture, it has the same taste. So I was really freaked out, but it is 100% vegan and it's made in a lab. This is where if you're like trying to avoid processed foods, probably don't go this route, but I personally don't have an issue eating it. So I eat it a lot and they're great. The only thing I will warn you about is the really delicious ones, like the chicken sliders and like the crispy chicken patties and stuff like that. They have a breading on them and that typically increases the carb and the fat content. All the ones I've consumed thus far have more protein than they do carbs or fat. However, they do have a ton of carbs. So you could always opt for more protein-rich options that aren't breaded. So stuff like that would be like the chicken strips from Beyond Meat or the scalpellini from Gardein. I'm sure I'm butchering every one of these things, but those are great options as well. So if you are tracking your carbs, definitely aim for the lower carb option if you're trying to do a lower carb diet. If not, enjoy all the carbs and the deliciousness that's around Gardein and all that stuff. And now protein powders. So protein powder is a great way to get your protein. And the brand that is like my holy grail of vegan protein powders, mind you, I have tried probably like 20 different vegan protein powders and like 90% of them taste like asshole and they taste like chalk and dirt and it's to the point where it's inedible. So the one that I love, drumroll, is Vega Sport, and Vega is amazing. Also not sponsored by them. I give all my money to them. So Vega Sport, I like the vanilla flavor. I've also had the mocha and the chocolate. They're both great. I personally just prefer vanilla. I don't like chocolate flavored things. but they're very good. It's made from a pea protein, so if you are avoiding soy or gluten, you can always do that option. Isolated pea protein is a common ingredient in vegan protein powders if you're trying to avoid soy and stuff, so it's a great option. The Vega one also is enriched with branched chain amino acids, and it's really great. I love it. It has 150 calories, 30 grams of protein. A1. I love the flavor. I know some people don't like the flavor. The other options that I personally liked, I didn't like love them obviously because I stick to Vega, but they didn't taste awful, is Sun Warrior. But you have to get the chocolate one. The vanilla one is not very good. Plant, so it's PLNT. I've had that. That was really good. It was just a little bit on the pricey end for what you're getting. I think when I bought it, it was 20 servings for like $45, and that was just like too much. And then PE Science also has a few flavors now. I've tried the vanilla one, and I've done a review on the PE Science one. I liked it. It just has like this overwhelming stevia taste, so if you don't like the taste of artificial sweetener, don't go that option. So yeah, those are my protein powder suggestions. So if you have absolutely any ideas about what you want me to talk about in regards to the series, please comment down below and I will try to incorporate them into a video. The only thing I will say is I can't really post a ton of workouts because I don't have someone to go to the gym with usually, and when I do, it's late at night and there's a lot of people at the gym and it's really awkward, and I have really bad anxiety, especially in regards to the gym, so I probably will not be posting a ton of workouts. However, I can talk about anything and everything that you want me to talk about. So leave that down below. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this helps some people out, and yes, bye.